Thank you for coming. I'd like to introduce to you our guest professor, visiting professor from Portugal, Professor Manuel Carvalho, who is working in Lisbon, but also in Portimão, Ishmat, where he works as a lecturer. He has huge academic experience, but also architectural experience, not only in Europe, but also in Africa. So it's worth listen, taking notes, asking questions afterwards.
Or during.
Thank you for coming, and
Thank you for
this position. I'll just switch one thing here. Sorry, that's yeah. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay. So, first of all, I would like to thank the school itself for this nice invitation. It's not the first time I've been here; it's the second, and I consider myself now a Polish boy. The rest of the year I'll be visiting Portugal, and so thank you for the school, in the person, of course, of our dear Professor Anna, and also, well, not so dear Bartok, and dearest Marta, and all the others. As your professor had the opportunity to say, I'm coming from Portugal, which maybe for you, for some of you, it's a bit of a tropical climate place. It's not. It's in Europe. On the end, we say it's on the beginning of Europe. Very small country, where I have this, where I enjoy working as a professor, as a researcher, and wherever else it's needed to do. I work at a very small school called ISMAT in Algarve, which is the south of Portugal, and I'm also a researcher at Évora, which is kind in the middle of Portugal. At ISMAT, I'm mainly in charge of two courses. A course of, let's call it, project architecture, designing architecture. I think that it's not a common name all over Europe, but what we do, of course, is projects. And on the fifth grade, on the fifth year, 2 last semesters of the course, and I'm also a professor in methodology, which means that I'm quite in the best place possible to talk to you about something that it's quite a work in progress thing, which is try to understand what this strange thing called research by design, what it is, how to do it, and how can we use it in our own jobs in academia and outside academia. Today we will have a short talk about what's happening mostly in the academic universe, but of course the practice exists. I call it a small talk because I hesitate to call it a lecture or even a lesson. This will be a colleague of you, me, talking about something. So please, if I'm talking too fast, please make me a sign. I will try to be slower. If my English is my English, you ask me for it, and feel free to ask whatever you feel you should ask at the moment that you decide. So, as I told you, my name is Manuel Carvalho, and I'm here to talk to you. So this is the question that started everything. Why research in architecture? I meant, is it something that it's mandatory? I would say yes. Nowadays, yes. The question about research in architecture takes us to the other difficult question: what's architecture? Because some people would say it's art, some art in the sense of an artistic something. Some others would say, no, it's technological. And of course, there will be a lot of people say, no, it's in between. I'm not quite aware. Oh, sorry. I don't think there's something in between. It's just architecture is architecture. It's not art. We don't need to look at the art to understand. Wait a minute. Some works of architecture are artistic and they become art. But it's not like we are doing an artistic process to get to the project itself. On the other way, it's the same. Of course, we need to know how to build. I would say that it's one of the things that distinguish architecture from other acts that we can perform, is that in the end, it should be buildable. And I say buildable, I didn't say it should be built. Because many times, in academics, almost all the time, but even in practice, we do architecture and we know from the first moment that we are not going to build it. For instance, we go for a competition and, well, we always go for a competition with some faith that we are going to win it. But even if we win it, which is absolutely normal, maybe they don't build it. But that doesn't mean that I must not keep in mind that one of the specifics of architecture as it is, of the process of architecture, of the, if you want, the product of the process of architecture, is something buildable. So, why should I be so focused on this idea of project while I'm being an architect or trying to get to be an architect? When I decide, as you decided, to become an architect, to learn how to become an architect. One of the things that we think it's very important to be aware from day one is that you will be doing a lot of works during your course, but in the end you will have no paper saying this guy is an architect that can do one house, two buildings, a dog house, and a swimming pool. No, you became an architect while you're studying. And this is very important because you're the responsible for it. Professors and other people working with you during the course are not allowed, they should respect you, are not allowed to change you. It's you that must change by yourself and understand where are you going. So, an architect mainly, it is a designer. It's someone who projects, and the idea of projection has this double meaning, if you want to. It's something that I'm dreaming of the future, but I'm also showing others what the future could be. But the beginning of all this should be, the first thing is, where do I start? What should I do? How do I do it? And along the way of this slow but sure transformation that makes you become an architect, means that in the end, well, usually along the way, but in the end, surely, because if not, it's not the end, you start all over again, you will be able to go to a place, doesn't matter where, and you'll be able to understand critically that place. You look at it and you say, okay, come on. In my opinion, this place has these characteristics or these difficulties or these opportunities, wherever. And now the next word is absolutely crucial to understand what we are talking about when we are talking about research by design. At the same time, we start to understand, if you want, we start to dream about what this place could be. At the same time that I'm explaining to myself and to the others what this place can be. And of course, I need to know, I need to have the tools to change the place from what it is to what it could be. And this is what an architect, if you want, an architectural designer do. Many people will finish their course, will change themselves into an architect, but they will never do a project in their lives. That's not true. That's not even a problem. I would love that, for instance, the Prime Minister from Portugal would be an architect. Why? I'm not hoping for the Prime Minister to be building small houses all around the country. It's the question of the way that he looks at the world, the way that he looks at the problem, and the way that he looks at the answer to the problem. Be aware that I didn't say the solution. It will be an architectural way. So, if you're an architect, it doesn't matter if you're doing projects or if anyhow, you're being doing anything else. You can be the next prime minister from your country, the president, you can be rich, buy a tropical island and never done any work again, but you have become an architect. I'm talking about this. This could be in a very rapid, or if you want, short way, what seems to be the work of someone who's doing architecture. I go to, and I call it placemaking, because, of course, when you do architecture, even if you're doing the smallest building in your life, you're doing the house of the dog, something really small, the place will change just because you did something over there. Even if you don't do, the place will change, but that's going a bit too far. So it seems to be very logical that we say, okay, we start by looking at the place. Then we work very hard to find an architectural answer. What the thing I told you before, what that place could be. And finally, I will try to put these words or these ideas into practice and find a way to build the thing. But it's not true. A real architect will work like this. We start from, of course, there's always a starting point. It's someone who asks us to do something. And we start by looking at the place. And at a given moment, we need some kind of conclusion saying, it's my analysis of the place. What's the analysis? If you want, if you don't like the word place, I will take it out. I will put the question. But in reality, when I start looking at that question, I'm already thinking about the answer, if I'm an architect. So, this is not wrong, this is the right way. So I need to be aware of it in order to do it in a controlled fashion. And there's a moment, usually after the moment that I have this, my analysis of the question finished, there's a moment where I can say, this is the idea, this is what I'm going to do, this is what we are trying to put upon that question in a way that the question will change into our dream, into my dream. But also from the first day, not the first day, the first second, I'll be thinking about how to do it, how to build it, or how to put it down, with all the complexity that involves this kind of actions. And I must be aware that I'm not doing this in space like an astronaut. I'm doing this over a very solid ground, and as solid as possible, which is my own architectural culture. If you want, if you don't like the word culture, maybe it's a too heavy word, I would say our architectural knowledge, which is something that should have started way before the start of this project, and it will never finish after the project. We'll keep on doing it. And that's one of the reasons why we need to do research. We need to grow, permanently grow this library of ours, this knowledge that we carry with us, and that it's the base ground to do whatever you are doing as a project. Your students, right? I'm not talking to the professors. The professors, they know already all this, and they know it better than me. And looking at their faces, I know they are saying like, come on, we have heard that song, sing as a fado or something from Portugal. We don't want to. No, this is for the students. You, strange people, have taken a decision in your life to study, to learn. Now, exactly as if you are doing a project of the dog's house or whatever, you should look at your learning processes, your own learning process, and be critical about it, and try to understand what's happening, why it's happening, and how it was before, and how it should be in the future. So before, until very recently, come on, there are architects in the world for at least 10,000 years. There is the code from Babylonia, which is a written code for how to do architecture. And that to read, at least it's 10,000 years plus 21, which was the age of the guy who wrote the code. So he was already an architect. Until very recently, architecture was done like this. Architecture learning was done like this. You would have something that you would not call a professor, you will call a master, and the master will ask you to do exactly as he does. When I mean exactly, I mean the same solutions with the same process and, of course, the same result. And you will do it once, and you'll do it twice, and you'll do it 20 times until the day that you're able to do it exactly as the professor can do, as the master can do. Then you become a master. So now you can do your own way and torture the next students. That's one of the reasons why we professors accept work for so little money, is because we have this opportunity to torture people, which is always fun. The question is, some architects didn't have masters; they become masters by themselves. But that's another talk. But today, and when I mean today, is, let's say, for the last 70 years at least, we do not work anymore in that. In our process of learning architecture, it's no longer the same that it was before. It's no longer what we call Beaux-Arts, what was called Beaux-Arts, this system with the master and the student and so on and so on. Nowadays, we must be our own masters in some way. Of course, we still need professors. I need this job, please. I will not sell you the idea of that you can do it by yourself. In the end of the month, I still need to get some money to pay for my own life. It's not a question of being, but it's a question of a different relationship between the student and the professor. I would say that it's a much more respectful relationship in both directions. But we, you and me, we need to understand how it happens. So we need to find a way to learn, to grow that ground that I told you about, which is your architectural knowledge. So we get to this idea of research by design. the first thing to understand about this, this is a very strange way of speaking in English. This, for instance, for Portuguese, it's absolutely non-translatable in one sentence. For me to make any kind of sense of this sentence, I need to say at least 5 different sentences. Why? Because the expression by design in English can mean several things at the same time. So we were lucky that someone, and we're going to see who, has found this expression. Design, of course, is how to do. A design is, it can be a drawing, can be a will, but it also can be a project itself, the act of project itself. But by design, in English, it's a lot more. In English, by design, something by design is your destiny. A guy that, you look at someone who's playing incredibly well piano in the TV or wherever in the concert, and you ask, how come? I did the same course that this guy. My sister went 24 years learning the piano, and now there comes this person that can play the piano as an angel. He does it by design. It's his own way. And the reason, again, for this to choose this idea of research by design as the favorite is not the correct expression, as the natural way of an architect to research, is also because somehow research by design is it's a process very close to the process of designing itself, as of doing the project by itself. I would tell you that maybe if we choose not research by design, but for instance, the expression thinking while drawing, which, if we stop a bit to think about it, it's quite a complex idea. We find, for instance, Palasma from Finland, that will tell you the hand has his own intelligence, which, of course, you have a big fight in your arms because you have your own intelligence, your hand has your own intelligence, and they might not be. Of course, we know what Palasma means. It means that somehow we need, I'm always bringing my computer with me. I need to do this. If I think better if I have this in my hand, even if I don't have where to use it. And that's what Palasma is talking about. But at the same time, the hand is also the tool from the brain. When I was a student in my last century also, about 40 kilos ago, my own professor, the 5th year professor, he told me that, you can draw. It's easy for you to draw. I say, oh, thank you. He says, no, I'm not telling you thank you. You have a problem. Why you have a problem? Because you're letting your hand get the best of you. You are now almost doing your projects in a way that it's automatic, because your hand will do it while you're sleeping, a bit like our friend over there, and while you're not the professor, the student. And he told me, now you should, for the next month, you should draw with your left hand. I said, oh, yes, professor, yes, professor. Wait for it. Of course, the guy should be a witch professor, because very few days after, I had a small, big accident. And in fact, for 3 months, I could not use my right arm. And I started to draw with the left hand because I needed to finish my course. I was in the last moment of the course, and I will not leave the thing out. So I started to draw with the left hand. The first days was really difficult, but maybe 3-4 days after, I was drawing. Okay, it's not so easily, but I was drawing. I was communicating through drawings. And I saw it that the drawings were exactly the same on a mirror. Because all of us, we have this mechanical arm, we have this distance. And when you do, for instance, a turn, a curve, it's our curve. In the same way that when we write, someone says this is the writing from José, it's not the writing from Margarita or from Anna or from Massimo. The only thing is that we draw like this with the hand, with the right hand, and we draw like this with the left hand. And that's it. So, although I do love Pelasmo's work, and I think it's seminal work, I don't agree with him totally. If we take literally his lesson, I say that it's the head that designs, in fact, and that draws and that designs, which are different things. So I was prepared to tell you all about the life of this person and the things that he wrote and so on and so on. I would leave to you the will of doing it if you want to. Thankfully, we have internet, so if you put his name, it will you will find out there are a lot of people with the same name, but only one of them have written about the term research by design. Around the year of 1963, which is the most important year in architecture ever. You know why? Because it was the year that I was born. So, more than knowing who's the guy who said this, it's more important to know why did he say it and what does it mean. The question for us is for you to understand, of course, when you think about 1963, you look at me and say, ooh, you're an old guy. So 1963 is very, very, very old. It's not, compared to the 10,000 years that we were talking before. And it's very important if you want to become an architect, because that's the subject of our talk. And if you want to understand that to become an architect, you need to research. And if you accept the hypothesis that the way that architects research is this method of research by design, it's important that you take a bit of a step back. You go visiting 1963 and try to find this Donald T. something Campbell, which was a very nice guy. Sorry, I need to. Again, one of the things that we know about him is that he chosen this expression, and he was not an architect. He was a designer, but not an architect. He chooses this expression in order to put the tone on the idea of researching this is impossible in English. I need to. This is one of purposely. I mean, with purpose. It's not research just because the professor said, you need to research. No, come on. There's a purpose on it. And the idea of it's sorry. Thank you. I told you that the professors in the house, they knew a lot more than me about the things. It's whatever. It's the thing that she said. You know? It comes with it. So, one of the first architects, I always feel a bit awkward when I heard someone say the first people, the guy who coined the expression, the first to say something, and then 2 years back, we find the same expression written by someone else 10 years before. So who cares who was the first? But one of the first persons to somehow significantly discuss this concept of research by design was someone that maybe you know about him from other areas in architecture, which was, of course, Christopher Alexander. It's now dead, peace to his mind, but who published in 1964, he published a lot, many years, but in 1964, he published a paper that was very intensively thinking about the idea of integrating research and design processes in architecture, and that's what we are talking about. I'm only dropping these names so you understand that I know a lot of names. No, it's important that we understand when we are working in architecture, we need to know who are the real masters, not the ones from the, and Christopher Alexander will be one of them. And at the same time, well, not at the same time, in fact, almost 20 years after, again, someone coming from the north of Europe, too, I don't know if they both come, but Horst Riethel, the very nice gentleman in the photo, he talked about what kind of problems does architecture deal with, which is also something that we need to talk about it and we need to think about it. Because it's when you ask someone, what does an architect do? The automatic answer is, he will do projects, he will do houses, we'll do bridges, we'll do parks, we'll do streets, whatever. But what we really do, we do all those things, of course, but we are doing this while we are immersed in a very, very strange universe that this lovely chap called wicked problems. Again, a very difficult expression to translate out of English. In Portuguese, is the direct translation is the worst possible. It's almost an insult. But you can see a movie in America, and the guy says, "Oh, look at my new motorcycle," and the other says, "Wicked." And what he means by wicked, he means very nice. It's very good. But for others, wicked can be something like perverse. The real issue about wicked problems is that we work in a world that's very dynamic, which again, if we go back to the scheme, the very short scheme that I show you about what a designer do, is the problem about, for instance, you go to do a survey to do a project in a place, and there is a beautiful tree in that place, and you do all of your idea looking at the tree, and now the building starts, and on the first day the guy who's going to build the house goes there and cuts the tree. So this is a wicked problem. In the end, if your project would solely depend on the tree, it was not good architecture. From the beginning, we know that things are dynamic, things are changing. We work with live places, with live people, with everything else. And this somehow is what our good friend Riethel wanted to explain to us when he was talking about wicked problems. And of course, sorry, I have to read this. Research by design often involves interactive cycles of investigation, conceptualization, prototyping, and refinement to generate and validate design solutions, which, at least if we don't want to spend too much time, going step by step in such a complex sentence, we at least say this is complex. And many times it's contradictory. Contradiction and complexity, I think that maybe some of you, except the professors, of course, have heard about this expression, complexity and contradiction. I would say that for sure, research by design, exactly like design, is a non-linear process. We go there, we go back, we go there, we go back, we go up, we go down, we start again, we find two parallel ways. Those parallel ways will melt into one, after they will become three. It's not easy, it's wicked. One of the things that researchers do usually, what's a research? It's an inquiry. And one of the first things when we start an inquiry about who cares the theme is try to understand what others are doing about the theme that we are exploitation. What nowadays, especially academics, what they are doing, what they are saying about what's our problem. So our problem today is research by design, the method. What is the state of the art of this method? I brought a huge list of schools, but I start by saying solemnly that this is not an isolated thing. This is not a thing that a crazy guy is doing in a mountain somewhere in Spain. This is something that all over the world, of course, for the purpose of this conversation today, I will keep it a bit more for the Europe, or at least the North. But all over the world, we have schools working on it. AA, Architectural Association in London, they work on it. They have a lot of things published, and they keep, remember, this is a very alive subject. The discussion is still there. There are still people saying this doesn't exist. Others say this does exist, but it's a bad thing. Others say this is the new God, we should all bend to it, and so on and so on. Architectural Association in London is one of the school. ETH Zurich in Switzerland, they have quite now an important number of publications about it. Bartlett School in London also, although Bartlett School started first, I mean, it's one of the first schools where around 1950, 1960, they didn't call it research by design, but they were starting to think about this connection between research and project. Nowadays they are a bit behind, but they will get there. Delft University of Technology in Holland, Netherlands. University of Applied Arts in Vienna, Austria. I'm giving you these names because if by somehow you need to find any more information, you follow it. Of course, Columbia University in America, at least before Trump was elected. I don't know if this university still exists, because they had this terrible habit of speaking, and the worst habit of them is they would think about what they were speaking, and many times they were speaking very interesting things. So hopefully our friends from Colombia are still alive. Of course, if we talk Trump, if we talk universities, we must talk about Harvard. Harvard, who has this image of a old lady, a fat old lady even. It's not. Harvard is a very fast young girl. They work a lot, and they are on the point of the thing. So I wonder if anyone in this room has the opportunity to go to Harvard. Congratulations, it's the third best school in the world, being the first ISMAT, my own, the second Cracow, and then there are 2 empty spaces, and then comes Harvard. In Portugal, it's not something that you can be very interested in, but I would have to point at least the research center of the University of Lisbon, which they have a research line specific for the theme of research by design. The University of Évora, where I'm coming from, it's my alma mater. Since I finished my course, they have slowed. No, I'm joking, but in fact, they have slowed a bit in this. And then there are a lot of architectural schools like ISMAT who are working on this very, well, I would say daily. So, because complicated things never become simple, now I add a little more complexity into this question, because this nice Professor Christopher Freiling, again, not an architect, he was an industrial designer, he said, okay, research by design, it's a thing, it exists, but you can look at it from 3 different perspectives. And this Freiling approach nowadays is almost universally accepted as a way of dealing with something, because, you know, when we are dealing with something very dynamic, very complex, we need to find a way. Even if we are talking about methodology, we need a method to deal with methodology. And he says we have three ways to look at it. We have research about, if you want to, about design, which is, you've seen it so many times. For instance, someone who does a dissertation about an existing project, about an existing building. And this is research by design, according to Freiling. You have also the second, sorry? Into design, sorry.
Was research into design or by
yes. Design? All of this is...
By design is split
in three. About, I'm not following the exact... about the design or research for the design, which means this is the classical research way, the one from the 17th century on, which the one that you start by doing, let's call it theoretical research. You find some early conclusions, and you stop your research, and now you start your designing part of the process. This is the most common. As I told you, since the 17th century, we do it in science, but we are not scientists. And it has a big advantage. It's a very safe way to work, because it's something that is very, you don't mix things. Now you're doing the theory, now you're taking conclusions, now you're using these conclusions, and now you're starting a project. And in the end, you must look if your project will follow the conclusions. If the project doesn't follow the conclusions, now there's an error in the process. And finally, we have this strange thing about research. Sorry, now I missed the expression in English. Researching through design, which means that we are doing everything at the same time. Of course, we are not like a piano player doing 2 different melodies to do. That's not it. We do this and we do this, but we put the design process talking to the research process, and the research process talking to the design. I do a part of the research. I get to an answer. I'll feed my project with that answer, and maybe the project will make me a new question that I must go back. I told you, not linear. I go back to the theory, and I say, come on, theory, there's the design over there knocking on the door, making this question. So I never get to that middle part of the conclusions. I mix the thing, and in the end, the conclusion is the project itself and how should I put it? The knowledge that I've learned that will surpass the knowledge that I've harvested during the research by itself. So we come to the obvious conclusion that architecture is not art, architecture is not science, architecture is architecture. Architect is not art. It might become art, but it's not art because the process is not the same. An artist, at least a contemporary artist, is supposed to show us things that we never saw. Or at least things that when we look at them, we will read it, we will understand them in a different way. An artist doesn't follow rules. He writes his own rules. If an artist says, this is too expensive, this is forbidden, an artist would say, who cares? That's my art. An architect cannot say that. We do have a big responsibility. One of the worst things that can happen in your life as an architect is to build a terrible building and then have to cross the street in front of that building for the rest of your life, for the rest of your children's life, and for the rest of your grandchildren's life. And the grandchildren, and is very old, will say to a friend, I'm afraid that this was done by my grandfather, my grandmother. So, architects, we do have this situation. Architecture is not science. Science was something invented by philosophy, and it seems to be a way to find the truth, which is a very short way to put in perspective what can be science. Again, in the scientific method, coming from the 17th century again, truth is something that can be proved. If you test it twice, it will give always the same result, and it can be measurable. To be fair, even science now doesn't accept this 17th century idea. And you see, for instance, when they had to deal in the beginning of the 20th century, have to deal with this strange new physics and mathematics of the world that we cannot see because it's too small, and we get to a situation where we just cannot understand it. We do understand that it does exist, but we don't understand the rules of it. That's not unscientific in any way. But we are not working like that. For instance, one of the things that I really get nervous, and I hope I'm not putting my feet on the bucket by saying this at this school, is when I go to an architectural class and they call it the laboratory. I say, what are you talking about? We don't work in closed spaces, in space that we are aware of temperature, of pressure, of the cleanliness of the air, wherever this is. Well, this is a description of the laboratory. We work in the messy thing, complex thing that it's the real world. And a scientist, when he starts to work upon, who cares which is the science, they will try to get rid of all the complexity, if it's possible, of all the contradictions. A scientist will try to be analyzing pure things very strict things and try to put them away from any other influence that can somehow rotten the thing that is working on. That's exactly the opposite what we do. We know that whatever we do is systemic. I do a door and the thing will be different if I put the door here or if I put there, or if the door is open or the door is closed. And I'm talking about the door, I could be talking about the city. So in architecture, we do work in complexity, we do plunge into this. So we are not scientists. Again, as I told you before, and I know, sorry if I'm repeating this notion, but I think it's one of the important ones of this lecture, is that architecture is architecture. And we should be proud of it, but at the same time, of course, we are pulling into ourselves a huge responsibility. And wicked problems are wicked problems. That's our universe. We don't have laboratories. We live in this strange, let's call it strange place. I'm getting to the end. I'm looking at the clock. But so, if we are not artists, which artists themselves, they can easily explain their thought process or if you want, the structure of their knowledge, a specific knowledge. It doesn't matter if it's a musician or if it's a painter or if whatever, it's an artist. Scientists themselves, they can do the same. They can explain to us their, if you want, mind frame, which is an expression that gives me a bit of creep, mind frames. But they can also explain how their knowledge is structured, how do they do it to acquire more knowledge. So now we need to understand how is our mind frame as designers, how is structured our knowledge itself, our particular architectural knowledge. It's easier to stop here and say, I've told you before, it's a mess. It's a chaos. We like complexity. We like contradiction. Everything is, nowadays I go there, it's here, next day it's not there anymore, and it changed. No, but we really need to put this in an operational way, or we will become absolutely crazy. So again, I will get back to the people who are talking about all of these things, and I will go back. Now I won't go back 61 years. I will go back only 20-something years to 1982, and I will talk to my nice friend. I don't even know him, but again, he's a nice guy, Nigel Cross, who started to think about. He was one that says, that talk about this situation of the third knowledge field, meaning the third after art and science. And the guy started to try to understand how the mind of a designer works, or it's a bit dangerous, this approach, because thankfully he was trying to understand how it works, not how it should work. That we leave to the professors. There's another guy, Brian Lawson, and again, how designers think. Brian Lawson did a almost clinical, surgical approach of the thing. He started to cut the problem in very thin layers, and and he says and then But in the end, one of the most important things that he saw, he was working on the same direction of the other ones I told you before, but it's one of the first to say, again, this is a thing that is not linear. We must do this and this and this and this and this, and then we must criticize. We must text. We must, use our own work as a prototype and try to understand if what we did is the best way to do it, if the results are the best results we can have it. So this idea of going to the end, then come back, then start all over again, it's something that Brian Lawson told us a lot. Empiricism. This is something very complicated to talk about while we are at academia, because of course it seems to be almost a wrong thing to just go with your belly, not go with your head. But this again, it was not an architect. What is his name? Sorry, Donald Schoen. Donald Schoen was a very, very good industrial designer who did have a nice flight. He worked a lot in hospital furniture and things like that. And he had this idea of not only, of course, research to understand which could be the best hospital bed for someone who's been burned alive or wherever, or a broken leg, but also why designers would work in the direction they are working after some time working on the same thing. He speculated about the existence of a kind of empiric, I don't know if this can be said in English, but an empiric intelligence, something that comes from the experience itself. Plasma is not so far from this. Something that came from the experience, from looking at the result of a given experience, and coming back again and trying by step changing until the moment that this natural intelligence becomes like a I don't want to use any mythical terms, but in fact, when you look at something, it's not an instinct. We must understand this. An instinct is something that an animal has, or we also have. If I go to a very high place without a guard, I look and I'm afraid. I'm going to die. And this is an instinct. If I don't have this instinct, I have a big problem. I'm going to die anyway, because I have a big problem. But I'm not talking about instinct. I'm talking about looking at something and saying, this is right or this is wrong, and accept that this knowledge is valid in the process of my design or of my research. And this, if we accept this, we are changing the game. And a lot of it comes from Donald Schoen. This is another question that I think it's a bit difficult, especially when we are trying to, get to the end of a process. The idea of doing more than one task at the same time, which it seems that the women are better than the men. I don't know. Maybe the woman in me will help me go through the motions. But the idea of doing things at the same time, different things, of course with the same purpose, but at the same time, is something that is also very, very present in the methodology of research by design. So and we are going to the end of it, the answer is simple. You should work like an architect. You should look at your research as your own project. And you should look at your projects as your own research. So I'm quite convinced. I will change my mind if needed be, but today I'm very much convinced that if we work like this, we will be architects because we are researchers, and we will research because we are designers. And it's just, start with the glasses and the rest. So, looking, for instance, at the classical, now I use the word a bit, but the usual structure, for instance, of a research for the final work of your course could be, you would say something like, I start with TR is theoretical research. I get to some conclusions, I get these conclusions, and I will do the project. But this is the way that you'll be doing it. And I go as far as to say that even if you don't want to do it like this, you will do it like this. Because I can't believe that a designer is able to clear his head like a scientist, to get into this strange laboratory of the mind and only deal with the theory and don't be at the same time with the computer doing something else. No, we will be doing both at the same time. And if we are aware of it, if we take advantage of it, it's a bit like the old story of 1 + 1 equals 3. There are dangers. This is almost the last slide. The next one will be the last one. But there are dangers. This was a drawing that I did to my thesis director some years ago. I see you can yeah. Because the guy is a master in research by design, and he was always putting new themes on the table, and there was a moment that I told him, this is me. I'm going to die. So I need to tell you, because if I don't tell you about the dangers, it's like giving a lecture about drugs and forget to tell you drugs are bad things. No, research by design, it's not a bad thing, but it's a dangerous thing. Because the price to pay of this simultaneity and this non-linearity is that if you don't take it seriously, if you don't take notes all the way, if you don't structure your palace of knowledge, you will end up as the guy here. It was a joke, and afterwards, of course, when I was able to put the thing in this cartoon, it meant that now I know what I'm doing. And of course, the thing finished. Now I would finish with the last slide, which is not about research by design, but it's about current times, and I need to make a declaration of intention against the world. IA. IA is in Portuguese AI. I mean, artificial intelligence, right? People, it seems to be everything and the dog. And it is. But it's everything and the dog, exactly, that's my declaration. As when people used to draw architecture with feathers from a duck, and then comes a guy who invented the pen and said, this will be, now everything will be the pen. And of course, the guy with the feather will say, you crazy thing. Yeah, this will last 20 years, no longer. And that's, oh, you old guy, you're already dead. After the pen came this, and then the printer, then the computer, now reality, and of course, AI, artificial intelligence. We need it. But for me, and that's my final declaration, the only really, really interesting AI is architectural intelligence. Please work on it, please enlarge it, and please bring it back to me so I can learn something from you. Thank you. Any questions? The first question is why? Can I sit? Sorry. No? Can,
Question. Are you familiar with the term? Have you ever heard it before, research by design?
now you know all about it.
Now you know all about it.
Welcome. In fact, the research by design was not, well, this is a very, I don't know if I should talk about this to architectural students, because this is a shameful story. When in the 20th century, the universities decided that for architects to be recognized as scholars, they needed to have somehow a method of research. The first ones to speak, of course, were the artists. And they say, we don't need it, we have it already. So it's quite common, for instance, in a PhD, and there are PhD in art, that an artist will bring his own work, will put it about in front of the jury, and says, and as his dissertation, this is my work. I stop here. And the other ones who say, we acknowledge it's your work, now you're a PhD graduate. I'm joking a bit, but you know what I mean. If you need to explain a work of art, it's not a good work of art. So the work of art is not meant to be, well, some of them at least, it's not meant to be to your brain, it's meant to be to your person as a whole. The scientists themselves, they had this situation already solved. The people from humanities, from social sciences, well, the name is already there. They said, we have a special method, which is inquiry. And so we are a science, we have our rules. It's only that we are not like a hard science, we are social science. And that's it. And the university says, welcome, as it says before to the artists. Then there was the problem with the architects, because the architect says, we are a bit of both. I mean, we can do things and we don't need to explain. They are beautiful. And of course, we also talk to people. We work for the people and so on. And we are very scientific because we do it seriously. And some of us can even write papers. So the only designers that step up and said, no, we are not artists, we are not scientists, we are designers, were the industrial designers. And most of the concepts and the things that we've been talking today, or at least I've been talking today, are coming from the industrial industrial design schools. And afterwards, some of us architects, ashamed with the situation of not having our own way of doing things recognized, because in the end, we do things in research by design, whatever we do. Some of us started to go back and look at what these strange people, these industrial designers, do and say, and try to understand if this is something that we have in common. And we have in common the designing process, the designing action. As I have both grades, I'm an industrial designer and I'm also an architect. For me, it was very easy to accept it. For others, not so much. It's quite normal that you never heard about it. Now you have heard about it. Research by design.
And regardless you see your future as architects or otherwise, it's good to learn this term by heart because it's being now, let's say, taken by other disciplines and other fields. Everything is now done through research by design because it is a method that actually corresponds with the complexity of the reality. And very often the corporate world declinates this phrase by in all shapes and sizes. So being an architect and knowing it by heart, because this is something you learn even by a small spectrum doing an architecture project. If you do it the way we ask you to do it.
Yeah, that's another question.
So this is a strong point. It's something you can offer.
I think that, and there are differences, of course. That's another question. One of the most I will almost say important, but mostly it's important because it's very known. Text about research by design. It's a text that was done for RIBA, Royal English. Okay, and it's a text that starts from the beginning and stops in the end, talking about research by design. But my take on that, I've worked a lot for many years on a text with 3 pages, and I cut it and slice it and try to understand it other ways, burn it and build it again, and even talk to the guy who wrote it, which is very curious, is because he says, "Oh, I wrote the thing for a meeting in RIBA that we needed something because we were starting to discuss something that it's a current discuss in a university, which is how does university can work directly to the practice world, especially talking about industrial world. So how the research in the universities can be used in research facilities, in industrial facilities, which is a theme which I would take at least 1 week discussing it, because I think it's a very, very dangerous idea if we give more importance to research because it's useful for the industry, and we start to abandon this other kind of research, if you want, now I use the wrong word, but a bit more philosophical, the research where we are open to talk in things that are not so straight and clear, things that are a bit more abstract. And I think if we don't do it, if we, university, won't do it, no one will do it. But again, we are not as students, we are not in university to get a job, to become a professional in a specific field. We are changing ourselves in a way that as professionals in a specific field, we work the better possible and we go beyond what's asked for us. And in that sense, most of this our work in research by design should learn a lot about the practice, the way of doing things in the practice. The question in practice many times is that, for instance, time-related problems are very different. You have a client, you need to get to the end on a usually very short time. You have a lot to learn from practice, you believe me. The guy who wrote the thing in Riba is Jeremy Till, which that for once is an architect, but he wrote it very, very, and 14 years after he wrote that small paper, which was not even an academical paper, it was a report. He wrote in his own site something, I can't remember the title, but it's something like Research by Design Reloaded, where he says, I wrote this small text 14 years ago. Who knew that for the last 14 years I've been asked to go so often to Spain? And I love Spain, I love the food, I love the beach, I love everything. So thankfully I wrote the thing because the Spanish loved it. And I was like, what? Okay, I love Spain also, so I understand him. Well, you know, it's our brother. Spanish are the brothers of Portuguese. And you know what they say about family, you cannot choose it. That's it. Any more questions from Anna? Thank you, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.